Hi everyone! If you've watched my previous videos, you'll see that my surroundings have changed. I packed up my residence in preparation to fly off to Singapore tomorrow night. This time, I'm flying back because of the Piscine, which is the selection camp for 42 Singapore's 2026 cohort. While I'm doing the Piscine, I will continue vlogging. I'll create either a daily short or a weekly video, depending on how my time commitments pan out. And I'll be focusing on an angle that's underrepresented amongst Piscine bloggers and vloggers. Who are midlifers? To me, midlifers are people between the ages of 35 and 55. We're old enough that version 2.0 or even 3.0 of what we learned in university or in whatever tertiary education we had has already come out on the market. But we are still too young to contemplate retirement as the default option. I believe the upper age limit of midlife is actually slowly creeping up. It's going to go from 55 to 65 because we are all living longer, and more of us are starting to think that instead of working till 55 or 60, we are going to want to work until age 70. What do midlifers care most about? As Singaporeans, we are very fortunate because we have a government who's committed to take care of the financial aspect of upskilling. But for people in midlife, maybe not so much for those under 40, but definitely for everybody over 45. Scarcity of money may be less of a concern as scarcity of time. We expect that in the student stage of life, we would be focusing on studies to the expense of all else, but that is based on another expectation that we are working towards a future where we would start the working phase of our life, and that's when our responsibilities will go towards another direction. But now we've landed in a world where midlife upskilling means that study needs to be layered on over work and all other aspects of adulting, creating a time management dilemma. And less obviously, but just as or even more impactfully, there's a long-term aspect to the time scarcity problem for mid-career adults. The half-life of skills is getting shorter. So if uni students are already wondering whether what they're studying in uni is going to be relevant by the time they graduate and starting to change their majors, what more the adults in their 40s and 50s? At that age, it's going to be about whether what we upskill in will provide a solid runway for 20 more years of relevance before we retire. Does 42 sound too good to be true? When I first learned about 42 through the Straits Times coverage, I felt it was an incredibly good deal to get to tertiary levels of software development capabilities for completely free. But I've been in tech-adjacent fields long enough to know that the IT industry trends young, and there's no shortage of Gen Zs who have coding know-how and who will form the backbone of the traditional software development employment market. Pivoting from a non-software development field with the hope to be employed as a junior-level software engineer just for the sake of the salary is not realistic. And yet, AI is precisely the reason why I'm applying to 42. AI forces all of us to be more computer literate. I'm going to be very honest, I would never have applied to 42 if it wasn't for AI. I believe that coding literacy is a very important auxiliary skill for almost all professions if we want to augment ourselves effectively with AI. Approaching large language models from the perspective of a builder rather than a consumer will help us to be realistic about what LLMs can or cannot do, and that will help us to decide when or when not to sign off the outputs. With coding knowledge comes the ability to provide scaffolding, whether it's through code or through specifications, to ensure that the systems that we build will produce intentional, consistent, and useful output. So that adds a new dimension to my midlifers dilemma in taking 42. For me, coding is an enabler, but it's not going to be my main line of business. Building a business while taking on a challenging full-time equivalent course of study isn't easy. But that's the sort of challenge that increasingly midlifers will need to juggle, balancing studying and work, because once you start working, stopping completely to take care of study is going to have consequences to your career trajectory. The goal for my Piscine diary is to share the realities of day-to-day Piscine life in a way that helps other people in the midlife demographic decide whether this course is suitable for you. Because I'm midway in building a freelance business, I have more control over my time commitments than other people who are tied to 9 to 5 schedules. But by recording how many hours I spend on campus every day and noting how much of my work was done on campus versus at home, I can give a realistic indication of whether you can fit that amount of face time around a full-time job. The other thing I'll talk about, which is very intertwined with the time commitment aspect, is where does the difficulty of coding hit a cliff? Vibe coding has reduced the amount of syntax and Python libraries that we need to know by heart before we're able to produce a working prototype of our ideas. But thinking computationally has a benefit, even in the age of AI coding assistants. If you know how to break down what you want to build into smaller steps, you can get it done with less token consumption and a less expensive AI subscription. Also, you'll have more control and visibility over how the tool or workflow that you built performs with different inputs under different situations. That ability to think computationally, which means to understand how computers process information differently from people and bake that into how you solve problems with code, makes all the difference to whether a comm science assignment takes 4 hours or 4 days. And I think it'll be fair to say that most of us who embark on the 42 journey or any kind of comm science course for that matter are going to hit a moment where we'll be assigned with a problem that leaves us stuck for days. I don't want to spoil the experience for future 42 Pisciners, so I will not share the technical content of the course, but I will speak qualitatively about where the inflection points are when I hit that wall and get stuck with an unsolvable problem. For calibration purposes, I was a mechanical engineering major 30 years ago, but never practiced engineering in that field. I went on to 12 years of employment in analytics, so I have some adjacent experience, but I've never been educated formally or otherwise in computer science or software development. Thirdly and lastly, my Piscine diary will talk about the challenges of retooling myself from work mode to student mode. At work, I dealt with analytics problems that involve a lot of attention to detail. Sometimes, whether I got a formula right or wrong had material consequences to the P&L. For example, you can have a compounding formula, and whether you're compounding gains or losses is life or death for a business. But the way you approach problems at work is to get a minimum viable product or MVP out as soon as possible. And then you make incremental improvements later on as you go along. The work environment cultivates impatience, and it's also the ultimate open book exam. In the Piscine, we will have 4 exams on Fridays where no peer interaction and no internet are allowed. This will hark back to the closed book exam days of my secondary school and junior college. I'll be very candid with you that the exams are the part of the Piscine that I'm the most nervous about. The exam questions will go upwards in difficulty, and once you make a mistake on one question, you won't get any marks for the subsequent questions that you get right. That means if you make a mistake on the first question, you could get 0. I understand why it's that way. Beginners software engineering courses cover problems that have been solved many times. To solve new problems in the future, we need to start first by learning the techniques and solving easy problems. And the only way to ensure that we internalize the thought process to solve the problem ourselves instead of just copying other people's solutions is by having closed book exams. But the further removed we are from our school days, the more rusty we become at taking exams. It's been 14 years since I last took a closed book exam during my MBA days. So, you'll see what it takes for me to get back into that exam mindset and put my best foot forward towards passing. The first session of the 42 Singapore Piscine runs from 25th of May to 19th of June 2026, and that's the one that I signed up for. I hope to bring you some real-life honest perspectives on surviving this as a midlifer and learning alongside Gen Z. This is A Long Random Walk, the upskilling channel that dives into the hands-on details of retooling yourself in midlife. Stay tuned for more updates on how the AI auntie tackles the Piscine. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye-bye.